So hi, thank you. My name is Bob Meese. I manage the games business development group for Google Play, and I'm going to present to you today on best practices for success on Google Play. The guys this morning, the first section, they focused mainly on our newest products, what we're launching right now or very recently. And I'm going to focus on some things that have been around maybe a little bit longer, but that we're really excited about and that we as the partner team are encouraging developers to adopt. And so first, before we start, I really want to thank everybody. This is a great turnout today. There's a lot of different ways to spend your time at GDC, and we're really grateful for you guys to spend it here with us. So thank you. All right. So Heroes has been our theme, and us is the partner team. It's very easy to convince us that you guys are all the heroes. Just our job is working with all of you, bringing all of your great feedback into the team at Google Play and Google more broadly, and working with you to adopt all of these exciting new products that are being announced. As the partner team, we're focused on, I'll focus on 5 things here today. So the first brief section will be on benchmarking and on working with more of you. Our team has grown over the past several years, and so it used to be the case we were working with like some developers. Now we're working with more and more developers. We want to be working with as many developers as possible, and so we'll talk about that. In terms of the products we'll focus on, store listing experiments has been out since Google I/O last year, but has been very successful. Pre-registration is another thing that we'll talk about. Play game services is another, and then finally talking a bit further out into the future in terms of new technologies and new platforms. So first on benchmarking and working with all of you. So retention benchmarking is something to keep in mind, and so this is public data that was launched last year in terms of what the retention curves for top games look like. And I bring this up just because as mobile games, as the market evolves and matures, many times when you're trying to get a player into your game, you're competing with what that person is doing right now, which is probably playing other games. And so it's really important to keep in mind what your metrics need to look like to make a successful long-term game, and having that discipline even before you're launching. And so we're increasingly working with developers to help them have these best practices, understanding what is the state of the art, what are the best developers doing today. Also, I would encourage, so many of you are already working with, for any developers that are in the audience today that are not yet working with the Play Games BD team, I would definitely encourage you to check out this link, g.co/play/gamesbd. So it's a quick form. We review every single submission we get into this form, and we're trying to manage more and more developers, but we will ask you for some data. We can't manage every single person, but we want to manage as many of you as possible. And so that's the quick intro part. Just to get into store listing experiments, it's something that we're very, very excited about. It's been a very successful product for us overall. And so here was, so Congregate and their game Epic Skater here was, we launched this product at Google I/O last year, and this was the game we launched with. As you can see here, they initially started with that top icon and then moved to the yellow icon down at the bottom on the basis of their use of Google Play Store listing experiments. If you go to the major mobile app stores today, you will find that that yellow icon is still the Epic Skater icon across all of those stores. And so the developer is getting that return on the work that they did a year ago, and it continues to pay dividends for them in terms of higher conversion even now. Another developer that we worked with, Dots, took a really analytical and really cool approach to breaking down all of the different elements of the Play Store listing page. And so you can see here that on the left side, the icon was the most impactful change that they made. It was around 8% lift on impressions to installs. You can look, though, this actually does multiply across. And so while each individual element in this case was about an 8% lift in the most case, across all of it, you're getting a 30+% lift across all these different elements. And so by using this tool, you can get a big lift. And then back to Congregate. So on the basis of the success in Epic Skater, they decided to move on to other games, including Global Assault. This chopper icon has become somewhat famous now within our team for a 91% lift. And one thing that I really want to point out that's really fascinating about this is beyond just the numbers. When you look at that control icon, before using Play Store experiments, Congregate had actually tested that icon, that control icon, in another test, and it had won. And so the difference was that before using Play Store experiments, the only way for Congregate to test this icon was to do media buys across ad networks, but that's a different environment. The best way to test your icon is in situ in the context of the Play Store, because that's the environment in which somebody makes that install decision to see it and decide whether or not to install. And so it's a really powerful way to directly integrate experiments and A/B testing directly into the Play Store itself. And so these are some really good examples of experiments. We've shared some of these before. One thing we haven't talked about previously, though, is Monster Strike and its international expansion. And so I'm sure many of you are familiar with Monster Strike. It's an extremely popular game in Japan, but they've not been as successful in other markets. But they use the Google Play Store experiments to help them expand into the US market in particular. And this is probably my favorite slide of the presentation, where it demonstrates that over the course of a couple months, Mixi was able to make a 68% improvement in their conversion based on a lot of different experiments. And so you can see here that there are dots that are colored a bunch of different ways, and they were testing various elements of their Play Store listing page that I'll go into in more detail in the future slides. But this was a really successful experiment for them that encouraged them actually to invest further into localization for this game. And so again, in this case, the icon did have the biggest improvement. We've found that dragons, cultures have different interests in terms of what a dragon should look like. The Japanese dragon can be different from a Western dragon in this case, a bit more aggressive, making eye contact. And so changing to this more Western style had a big impact for this developer in this game. Also, here's the short description. The short description was changed as well, and that also had a big impact. Remembering back to that slide on dots, where they broke down the different elements of conversion. While the icon had the biggest impact, in the case of dots, the short description and that change in optimization had the second biggest impact. And so this can also make a really big change for your games. And then third, your screenshot. So you can see here really emphasizing the ricochet mechanic, which is the core mechanic of the game, through all of these screenshots, and also focusing on a much cleaner style. Mixi was really focused on having like a less busy graphical style in this game, and so these screenshots really bring out how it's a more Western style in this game. In screenshots, going back to that dots example, dots had found that it was the third biggest impact, and so getting a sense of what you're changing and the relative impact of this, you can find these things out by using store listing experiments. Finally, for the Play Store elements, changing the video as well too. It's another element. The Play Store has emphasized video for a long time. You can see from Morgan's talk that we're adding playable units as well too, and so, but video is very important to get higher conversion. And then not just within the Play Store, this is another interesting thing where based on the success, Mixi continued to evolve their Play Store listing elements, but then also went into deeper localization in the game itself. And so here you can see the start screen, which again emphasizes that ricochet and is a much more cleaner style. If you're familiar with the Japanese version of the game, it's a lot busier and focuses on many, many characters. And then finally, in terms of the start screen here, so you have a much more Western style, and they're emphasizing a lot of the core visual elements. And so this is a big success where Mixi, just on the basis of initially using Play Store listing experiments, has really broadened the audience for their game. If you're like me, they actually launched a lot of these changes last month. Monster Strike is a great game, but like it had been kind of hard for me as an American to play it, but I've been into it a lot more over the last month now that these made these changes, so I'd encourage you guys to check it out again. And this is the last part of this slide, but just really saying that having experiments directly built into the platform was really powerful. That it's a really key advantage and allows them to have rapid iteration in terms of the changes they're making. And so this is a really great example for the power of this product. Next, going into pre-registration. And so this is another product that we launched originally last year that has some limited availability, but is showing some really positive initial steps. And when I think about pre-registration, I think about big game launches. And so one of the trends in the industry right now is towards fewer, bigger. When you talk to a lot of developers, they're increasingly, what feels like the dominant strategy right now is to focus more of your resources, more of your team's energy into fewer number of games, and really emphasizing on making them the best they can possibly be. And so not just focusing on your game when it launches, but definitely, as Ben was talking about, supporting your game post-launch for hopefully long periods of time. But what pre-registration is about is supporting these games even in the pre-launch period. And so we'll talk more about that. Here, on our part within Google Play, we have a significant interest in keeping the store fresh. We talk a lot about, somebody comes to the Play Store and they don't want to see just the same games and the same apps over and over again. And so when we think about a developer's interest in promoting their game before it actually launches, and our strong interest in having a fresh store, that's where pre-registration comes into play. And when we're choosing to work with developers, it's also important that this be a partnership. And so we're helping support these games before they launch, but it's very important here, as you can see, a cross-promo unit in Jelly, or social support in the case of Clash Royale. We're working together with developers to amplify and magnify these bigger launches. We're seeing this trend towards developers focusing more attention towards these big launches, and we want to find the best way to help them do that. OK. Cool. All right, yeah, mic issues. And so just more mechanically how this works here. So on the left, you can see that the pre-registration button, so where you would expect to see an install button, typically within the Play Store, that'll be a pre-registration button. And then on the right, you'll see that you'll be made aware that the game will be available, and you'll receive a notification at launch. And this is something, again, this very powerful. We're looking for a lot of the features that are most powerful when built into the store. And so when I talked about experiments, and it's most powerful whenever you can test within the context of the Play Store, here one of the benefits that you get of integrating Play pre-registration is the ability to have people become aware of the game whenever it launches. And so just to repeat, pre-registration is still not fully a public product. We're very cautious of the user experience and making sure that the games that start into Google Play pre-registration, that there's a really good user experience and they launch shortly afterwards. But this is something that we're interested in working with more and more developers in the future. And this is another great quote from Glue Mobile, talking about the benefit of pre-registration. It's really the key thing here is a clear call to action. And so developers are doing press, and they're doing PR, and they're doing marketing in advance of games. But without a clear call to action, you get a lot of loss in terms of people hearing about the game, but not necessarily installing it at launch. And so this is a really helpful tool to help people convert more of their marketing into installs. Cool. Next, talking about Play Game Services. And so Play Game Services is our global games network. This being used by a very, very large population of developers and players today. And as we talked about earlier, we're integrating more and more developer services into Play Game Services. And then there's other cool programs like the Indie Corner that we'd announced, where eligibility for the Indie Corner requires developers to integrate Play Game Services. And so you can think of this game network as the underlying layer upon which we're going to build a lot of other programs and developer tools. And just some of the tools that I'll talk about in this context today are the Player Stats API, Player Analytics, and then some of our video recording features. Some of these were covered earlier, but these are really important ones that I want to emphasize. Again, talking about what we as the BD team are encouraging developers to adopt, these are some of the biggest priorities that we see. And so in terms of the Player Stats API, so just machine learning has been a really hot and fun topic at Google. I don't know if anybody else has been watching AlphaGo, but it's been a lot of fun over the last week. And there's a lot of machine learning that's happening in the context of Google. And this is our ability to expose some of those great tools to more developers. And so here, really focusing on prediction. Ben had talked about a bit about this, but churn prediction and spend prediction is really powerful. And so a lot of the really cool technology that Google's building and developing for generalized uses, in other cases, we're applying that to Play Game Services through the Player Stats API. And again, so the Underwater Apps guys are becoming a bit of a favorite, but this was really powerful, where just that ability for developers of all sizes, this is quite a small developer, to be doing more advanced segmentation based on prediction around spend. And Ben had shared some of these results around a 15% increase in the number of in-app purchase transactions and a 17% increase in the amount of ad spend for advertising. And so here, just you get this benefit just by using Play Game Services of having Google's machine learning technology that you can apply into your game, and we think that that's really powerful. Then also getting into player analytics reports. And so I had mentioned at the beginning about retention curves and how important that is. I know that retention, it can be hard. Like, there's a lot of different ways to measure retention. But player analytics includes a retention report, which is a good default. If you're unsure how you're measuring retention, we strongly encourage you to be using these reports. And then the sources and sinks report gives you a sense of how much currency you're generating versus how much your players are consuming. Again, the Underwater Apps guys had a lot of success with that, and one of our hero developers from last year, Bomb Squad, also had a lot of success with this sources and sinks report, and so I encourage you to check both of these out. Again, as Ben had mentioned, just with Max Games, with this funnel report on the left, it's another more recent report that we're creating for developers that we think has a lot of value, and then on the right with cohorts as well too. And so, we want to talk with more and more developers about using these reports, using these services, and getting your feedback into what's working for you guys, what's not. We know that when you're getting into running your business, Keith has been great trying out a lot of our stuff, but we want to be working with more and more of all of you, both in terms of managing you as well as working with you on products like this. Then finally, in the play game services part, video recording is a big opportunity for us. Obviously, you see YouTube here as part of this, where by combining the size and power of Android and Google Play with distribution through YouTube, there's a ton of potential for this product within a Google context. And so as you can see here, this is a product that we launched last year, initially through the context of the Play Games app, where you can see, just when this resets, we'll start, so here's the beginning of it, where you press record, you go into a game, and then there you count down, then you're playing, and narrating over top of that optionally, and then you're just editing in YouTube, and then sharing out. And so it's pretty easy by combining Google Play as well as with YouTube. You can reach a very large audience by integrating the video recording products that we have. We started by doing that through the Google Play Games app, and now we've just announced that we have an API as well too, where we already have a couple developers that have adopted that, including Minecraft Story Mode and Summoner's War as well too. And so you'll start to see the video recording API integrated directly into more and more games. All right, so almost done with this part. So new technologies and platforms. And so after my session now too, we're gonna have a bunch of lightning talks. They're great. I encourage you guys to stick around for all of them. It's a really great format that we started last year and was just really entertaining to watch for me. I'll just touch on some of these briefly, but just wanted to queue up some of the topics that we'll be talking about in some of the lightning talks. So with Vulkan, with Android TV, and with our VR products. So quickly on Vulkan, so we talked a bit about that, but as a business guy myself, it's like, why is this relevant? You saw the Shark Tornado piece, which is amazing, but better performance in your games is obviously really valuable. Just like, we're really focused on not just all gamers, but like high-end games is increasingly a focus for us too. So we want to make sure that Android is for everybody, and so it's going to be massive reach in terms of casual, but we also have people who are dedicated to focusing on high-end gaming, and people who are really focused on Vulkan in that context. And then on just having thinner drivers, just having more maintainability on your side. So not relying on driver vendors to update their software, but giving more control to the game developers themselves, so that you don't need to deal with differences across the hardware ecosystem. So there's a lot of value to Vulkan, and we're supporting that in Android in a standards-based way, and so we're very excited about its future. Next on to Android TV, where Nathan Camarillo will talk about our living room products in general, and the lightning talks. So in terms of the progress we've made, so great partnerships with Sony, Sharp, Philips, various other service providers. For us, when we look at the majority of Android TV deployments to date, it's been more casual gaming style D-pad games, and so with PewDiePie, Legend of the Brofist here, and then Disney DuckTales, here's some examples of some of the earlier games that have come to Android TV, and so I encourage you to stick around for Nathan's lightning talk on this topic later on today. And then this is an example too of the high end, and so Borderlands, the pre-sequel, is actually coming at the high end, and so it's one of the great things about Android, of having that diversity of these very casual franchises, but also these core games, these high-end games as well too, and so we're able to stretch to reach both of those in the context of our living room products and Android TV. Then finally, just a quick shout out. We got a lot of smart people within Google working on VR, and Nathan Martz is one of them, and he's going to give a quick lightning talk on our VR efforts later on in the lightning talk session. And so that's it for my section. I just really enjoyed sharing all of this with you. We really enjoy GDC, where it's an opportunity to reconnect with a lot of familiar faces, but also meet a bunch of people. So all the people who were around earlier will stick around. Thank you for spending the time with us this morning, and I encourage you to stay for the lightning talks as well. Thank you.